Greetings, everybody. It's Marcel Williams here yet again with another talk. It's Tuesday, the 1st of April 2025. I've been teaching on biblical prophecy being fulfilled, but I'm going to again take a side note again, and I'm going to talk about something that is in a way related to fulfillment of prophecy. Once a person looks at it later on, it might become clearer. But for now, I just want to introduce by saying that every time when we look at the finances on the news, the television screens, we always see, for instance, that the dollar is 18 Rand 80 cents and thereabouts. The euro is 21, 23 Rand per euro. And the pound is 23 Rand, 24 Rand for a pound. And it's quite an anomaly. Why is it that it is so skewed? Did you know that Africa has been exporting mostly raw materials to the Western countries? And when they import things, they import products that are developed, like jewelry, electronic goods, etc. Why is this so? The proper reason people will come up is that it is because Africa is mostly undeveloped countries. I would say for decades it's been purposely kept undeveloped. I'm going to talk about the thefts from Africa. I have an example, for instance, Mali, the country of Mali that has uranium mined there. They would export it to France for next to nothing, something like 2% of its world market price. And then you get a strange situation that most of France is got electricity, but the country that is exporting the uranium, like Mali, most of the population doesn't have power. This is something that is actually unacceptable, and yet it's happening for a long time. And whatever trade that these African countries make, they have to deposit the money into French banks. And then they would have to apply from these French banks for the use of their own money. So there's something very wrong about what's actually happening. I don't know if you've heard of what's been happening in West Africa. We had, for instance, coup d'etats. Now, just to pause a moment, just to make sure that everybody understands what this coup d'etat is. A French word or term, but it's used when we talk about the forceful overthrow of the legitimate government, the elected government of a country. And in Africa, because of its colonial past, it adopted the form of government that came from Britain, from England, from Europe, which we call the Westminster form of government, with parliaments and parties vying for position, etc., and a cabinet that would do most of the decision making and the law making. Now, these Western powers were dominating Africa because of its colonial past. That's a long story. I'm not going to go into that now, but just to elaborate on the point of coup d'etats, what actually happened in West Africa because of the corrupt leaders there, presidents and so on. Some countries have had coup d'etats, like Mali, which is the one I'm talking about now, and Burkina Faso. In Burkina Faso, there's a soldier that took over there by the name of Ibrahim Traore. And he's doing some wonderful things in that country, When I was at school, and long after I left school, I really believed that coup d'etats was wicked and illegal. But I've come to change my mind with the situation that's happening in West Africa. It's almost a situation where it has to have happened in order to get liberation from exploitation from these European powers and the United States of America, to get free from this neo-colonialism. So they got so-called independence, but they were not independent because they were financially bound. I gave the example of the French banks and the fact that they must export raw materials at far below the world market price. That is plain wickedness. It's plain exploitation. Another example outside of Africa is the country of Haiti. You know, Haiti, back in the previous century, not even the previous one to that one, they fought hard and gained for their independence, and the French came up with a deal with them for their freedom, but it's not really freedom. What actually happened to them is that they had to sign an agreement where they had to pay reparations to the French for their freedom, and that reparations has burdened them with debt over the decades to the point where Haiti is one of the, if not the poorest country in the world, and it's kept in that way. So from this talk, I just want to bring this point out that it's unacceptable that this colonialism still perpetuates. This neo-colonialism continues in the case of these African countries. So what Traore is doing in Burkina Faso, and what Mali is doing, and Gabon and Niger, is an example to the rest of Africa, the leaders there, that they need to wake up and smell the coffee, because they continue to be exploited. And Africa is then the lowest continent with all the resources. Europe cannot exist without Africa with all its resources, yet it has the poorest and the least developed economies in the world. Now, why am I talking about this from a spiritual sense? Believers need to love justice. That is not justice what's happening, that form of theft. What are these military bases doing in African countries when they don't need them there? It's there to maintain the interests of these superpowers outside of Africa. And it's just a very unacceptable situation. And one respects a leader like Traore of Burkina Faso, who is uniting people and drawing people and doing wonderful things for his country. I don't have to go into the list of the things that in a short period of time has brought about great development in that country, and it's on a trajectory to improve phenomenally. Love justice. It says in the Bible, in Proverbs, that just one scripture that I've got. There's several others. I'm just going to list one. It says in Proverbs 21, verse 3, to do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. I cannot see how a Christian country can perpetuate what they're doing, and if they're a Christian country, they ought to believe that God is a God of justice. Now, where's the justice in what they're doing with that form of exploitation? It's over the top. I think I must do another video on this topic, because I'm just touching on the surface of some of the things. I wanted to also show you to, when I refer to a leader like Traore, in Proverbs verse 20, chapter 20, verse 26, it says here, a wise king scattereth the wicked and bringeth the wheel over them. Scattereth, scatters the wicked. Now, the French domination was so much in those countries like Burkina Faso and Mali. What I like to see is that now the diplomats in those countries are sent back home. The military bases are being closed. The French forces, the French soldiers are being expelled from those countries. They woke up at a late stage, but they woke up. And there's others that need to wake up also. Those military bases are there to protect the interests of the former colonial masters, and this has to stop. And this is the purpose of this talk today, just to bring to you this awareness, because in my perception, there's a lot of people that need to know this information, because they are tolerating something that's wicked out of ignorance. And the ignorance is because the mainstream media does not talk about these things. The mainstream media talks about things that are in favor of perpetuating the dominance of these superpowers like the USA, Britain, and other European countries. So with that, I'd like to wish you a wonderful day further.